When we installed Create React app, we also installed the testing framework. So what we are going to do now is we are going to create a file called functions.test.js that is in the source folder. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to call this as functions. Actually, it's going to be function.test.js. So any file that ends with the test.js will be thought as a testing.js. We'll also create a function.js file. This is where we are going to store all our functions. So now with npm, we'll also get another command called npm test. So in our terminal here, we're going to close this one, and you can type in npm test. Here you can see that it shows app.test.js. This is the same file we have in our React project. You can see that it's over here. Now when you run this test, we saw an error. This is because we deleted the Learn React default page. Now let's delete the default app.test.js. Select this one, right click here, and then we're going to delete this. Now let's run the test again. So I'm going to press Ctrl+C, npm test. Now it says that your test suite must contain at least one test. In the next class, we will learn how to create tests. Let's minimize this. Let's go to our function.test.js. Let's create our first test with functions.test.js. Now, when we installed Create React app, we also installed Jest. Jest is what is going to use to test our framework or the functions which we create. So here Jest is automatically installed. So we can just write a function called test, and we'll name this as multiples by 2. And actually multiples of 2, type in multiples of 2. And we'll use a function assertion called expect. So what we can do is we can create a function here, and inside that we're going to create an expect here. Let's save that. Here the first argument which we see here is the name of the text, and the second argument which we see here is what it does. So let's import the ×4. So the first thing what we'll have to do here is we just have to type in import, and then we're gonna ×4, actually multiples of, I'm gonna type in here as 4, save that, ×4, and we're gonna import that from dot functions. Save that. Now let's go to the function.js, and we're going to type in export function ×4. Now let's head back to the function.test.js here, and in the expect we can type in ×4, and then we can give in a value of 4, and we want it to be 16. Now if you check the terminal here, we received an error called undefined. That is because we have not written anything yet in the function.js. Let's get back to the function.js, and let's type in a value here. I'm going to give this as a, and inside this we're going to say return a multiples of 4. Save that. Let's get back to our terminal. Now you can see that our tests have passed. By default, when you create a React app, your app is included with the React testing library. You can check that by going to package.json, and here you can see that we have a lot of testing libraries here. Now let's create the app.test.js file. So I'm going to get back to our source folder. I'm going to create a file. I'm going to call this as app.test.js. Now let's go to the app.js file here. I'm going to close these items. And in the app.js file, I'm going to clear out everything that we have. So I'm going to get rid of all of these things here till I can see my app. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this one. I don't need all of these things. And then I also don't need all of these things here. So save that. And inside this, what we are going to do is we're going to simply create a h1 tag. And this is going to say, welcome to React testing library. Save that. So let's create a test to check that our app has a h1 tag. Let's go to the app.test.js, and then we're going to import render. Then we will write our test function, and from here we're going to type in test. And basically what this does is it outputs the h1 tag. Okay, then we're going to call another function here, and we're going to say const get by text. And here we will render that in the app. So now we need to find the h1 with get by text function. Basically this function finds what's inside the h1. Now let's copy the text in the h1 tag, which we have over here. I'm just going to copy this. And let's get back to our app.test.js, and then right below this we're going to create another const, and we're going to say h1 is equals to get by text, and we're going to use these two forward slashes, and whatever comes inside this is trying to go and find that. Okay, and we'll close this. Slashes are actually looking for the text. Now we can pass the expect. So right below this we can say expect to get h1 to have a text content, and the text content is welcome to React library. Let's save that. Now if you go to your terminal, you can see that we have passed both the tests, the one which was in the functions.test.js and the second one which was in the app.test.js. Now we know how to run tests on a component. If you remember, we created a checkbox. In that we used a hook called useReducer. Let's create two files. I'm going to call this one as checkbox.js, and then we'll create another one. I'm going to call this as checkbox.test.js. Okay, let's go to the checkbox.test.js file here, and let's create a test, and we're going to call this test as checkbox selection. So I'm going to type in test, and here we're going to call this as checkbox selection, and we're going to give it a function here, and inside this we are going to use a query called get by label text. So we're going to say const, and then we're going to say get by label text, and we're going to set this to render, and we're going to render that based on our component. So our component is checkbox. Okay, so I'm going to create another const, and this one is going to be checkbox, and we're going to assign that to get by label text, and we're going to look for something here. So basically we're going to look for not checked. Now all we need to do is to fire an event and check if the selection has happened. So we're going to type in fire event, and that's a click event, and you're going to check the checkbox there. Then we will expect the checkbox to check and to equal to true. We also need to import React here. So I'm going to say import React from React. Then we also need to import the checkbox. So I'm going to say import checkbox from checkbox. Let's save that. Let's go ahead and create our checkbox in the checkbox.js. So the first thing is that we're going to import React, and then we're going to import the use reducer here. So I'm going to say this as use reducer. Okay. And then we're going to export the function called checkbox. We're going to create a const which is checked, and then toggle. We're going to use reducer here, and inside that we're going to say checked is not equal to checked there. I'm going to set that to false. Now we can return, and here we're going to return this fragment. We're going to say label, and inside that we're going to say checked, that it is checked. If not, it's going to say not checked. Save that. Now we're going to set the HTML4 here. So we're going to set that to checkbox. Now we need to add a input type. So I'm going to type in input. Type is checkbox. I'm going to set the value here to checked, Okay, and we're going to add an event called onChange. It is going to toggle. Now, since we have the HTML4, we need to also specify an ID for this. I'm going to set that to checkbox. Now let's check in our terminal. You can see that we have all the three tests which is passed, including the function.test.js, app.test.js, and the checkbox.test.js. So by default, my checkbox is set to not checked, and my text checkbox.test.js is actually looking for the text, whether it is checked or not. So if it is checked, it's going to say it is not, it is checked. But since it is not checked, our test is now passed.